Welcome back. All right, we're going to pick up pretty much right where we left off before. We got Linux Mint installed. We really haven't done anything more than that. We installed it. We got updates applied. And as I see right now, since I just booted this back up, looks like there's some more updates. In the last video, I went ahead and did updates through the command line. Just want to show you how this is done through the graphical interface, giving you the same result. It gives you a list of everything that needs to be updated. You can select or unselect things if you decide you don't want them. Just hit the install updates there, and it's going to go through and install them. It's going to ask you for your password. Again, that's the one used to log into your account with, not your encryption password. So we'll go ahead and let that run through. That's going to take just a minute. I'll skip forward and pick up in just a moment. So let's take a step back before we get to software install, because I kind of brushed over the updates really fast last time. Updating Linux Mint or other Linux distros, you actually have a lot of control. And this is kind of important because updates come pretty fast for Linux. Again, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, you do not have to reboot your system after an update. And as a result, they're not really that annoying. They're not really that intrusive. It's a good idea to apply them as you get them. But you actually have a good amount of control here. So let me go ahead and hit edit. And I'm going to hit preferences here. And here you can actually go through and say how often you want to just check for updates. So by default here, it's going to check about 10 minutes after you start, and it's just going to check every 2 hours. You can change this pretty much all the time to whatever works for you. Show notification of updates, but available for 7 days, things like that. You can just go and adjust these to what matters for you, and that just makes this very clean and easy. Packages, we'll get into this in the future. There's things you can do to kind of automate this if you don't want it to bother you, but the most important thing is you actually have control as to how often it's looking for updates, how often it's giving you notifications, things like that. So I just wanted you to see that. That's right here under in the update manager here, right under edit and preferences. Okay, so I'm going to get this out of the way. Let's get back to the core point. You've installed your system, you've updated your system, so you're nice and secure. Now you want to start installing the applications you actually want to use. Of course, Linux Mint does come with quite a few applications here. This is very much a Windows-like menu system, so you can probably find things nicely. You may have looked at LibreOffice and gone, well, it's kind of like an old version of Microsoft Office. I guess I can work with this. You might have looked at Sound and thought, well, I guess this is going to work for me if there's nothing else. You look at what you have for a browser. You got Firefox. Maybe you don't like Firefox. Maybe you do. I don't know. But there's options because this is Linux, and Linux is all about options. So let's jump into the various ways you can install things on Linux. In the Microsoft world, in the Windows world, its installation is simple. You go find the application you want, you launch the exe, you install it, and it installs. In the Linux world, it can be that simple, but it's not guaranteed to be that simple. There are multiple ways to install things on Linux. So we're going to walk through those ways. We're going to start at some of the more simple ones, and then we're going to end with the most complicated one that has become less common these days, but is still there. And so I just want to make you aware of it. So there's a few applications we're going to install here, and I'm going to show you. Let's go ahead and zoom this in so it's a little easier to see, something I forgot to do in the last video when we were messing with the command line. We're going to install 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 different applications. And we're going to do them through various methods. The first method here, well, there's an application store. So if you're used to Apple and the App Store, or used to Microsoft, and for some reason you chose to use the Microsoft Store, or you're used to a mobile device, which you might have the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, whatever. Well, Linux has something very similar to that. Now, I call it the store. It's the application manager. But it's almost everything in there is $0. I'm cautious when I use the word free because free has multiple definitions, and I'll probably make a video explaining that in the future. The next one we'll install is going to be a video player called VLC. We're going to install it from what's called the repo or the repository. Then we're going to go install a different Office application, one that I personally like to use better, called Only Office, and we're going to install that from what's called a .deb file. We're going to install another application called Joplin. It's one I like to use a lot. Then we're going to use what's called an app image. Make MKV. Notice I said this one's complicated. These last two on the list here, actually I chose to add because they are complicated, and this is really uncommon these days. It used to be the only way to do it, but it's become really, really unusual. So Make MKV, great tool if you have a DVD player or Blu-ray player and you like to rip those files for your own personal use. IntelliJ is a coding tool. So you're not likely to use these, but I did want to show how this is done. So let's start the most easy, Sublime Text from the store. So the app manager, if we go here and you were just type, in this case, Software Manager. Okay, the easy way to find this, if you're not using Mint, maybe you're using another distro, you just type the word software. You're going to find something like this somewhere in the system. And it's going to take you to, let's back this up a little bit, take you to a page kind of like this here, where you can kind of search the entire list, find something you like, and go ahead and do the install. This is just a text editor, not overly complicated, pretty popular among people who like to, who are going to write code. Really useful tool. So all we want to do, this one's by far the easiest to do installs. We're just going to click install. It's going to challenge us for our password, and it starts installing. It's doing everything it needs to do from this point forward. Now it's done. If I go to the start menu here, or the Linux menu, or whatever you want to call it, I can go here and look at that Sublime Text right there. I can hit start the menu, hit Sublime, it's going to be there, and it's working. The application's up and running, no problems. So the nice thing about using the store is, well, there's a couple things. One, it's very simple. Two, the store actually manages or software manager, I should say, actually looks for updates. So when new versions come out, it's going to tell you to apply them. And if you decide to remove something, well, the removal is very simple because you can find it and hit remove. So this is really a friendly way to do this. But it's not always the best way, because sometimes the version you find here in the store is kind of outdated. It might not be the exact same release. Sometimes it's put out there not by the developer of the tool, but instead by someone who decided to be helpful and share that tool because it's open source and it's free and people can do things like that with it. You can always search for more stuff in the store, such as the next one we're going to install, that VLC. If I type VLC, there it is. There's all these extra things we can do with it, but there's VLC. So we can install that from the store. But we're not going to today, just because I want to show you another way. So next thing we're going to do, VLC. So when working within something like this, again, much like we did updates, we're going to actually have to run a command for this. So we're going to go to our terminal, which I'm going to open here. Again, I didn't realize how small it was going to show up on the screen last time. Sorry, I've zoomed in this time. So right here from the terminal, we're going to type apt install, and we're going to name the package VLC. But that's not going to work, because remember, when we did the updates, we had to elevate our user. When we installed from the store, it challenged us for our password to go ahead and install that with the right permissions. Well, we need to do that here. So it's sudo superuser do apt install VLC. And I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to ask me for my password. And now it says, hey, here's all the stuff I need to install VLC. This is a really nice feature of the repository. This goes through and says, hey, if I need to install this thing, I got to get all these other pieces that exist out there in the Linux world to make sure that this runs on your computer. It even has this section here. Hey, if after you do this, you might want to install these other things. That's cool. You might want to copy that. You might want to set that aside somewhere if you want those things. In fact, actually, I'd recommend definitely that one. In fact, let's go ahead and just copy that and paste that right there just for now. And tells you, hey, here we go. This is just like when we did the update. So I'm going to say yes. It's going to go through, download everything, and install it properly. And there we go. That has installed VLC. Now it's installed on the computer. We're all set. We're ready to go. Now what I want to do is show you how you find things in the repository. And this is actually pretty simple. So again, we're going to say apt, and we're going to say the word list. I'm listing things. And I'm going to say VLC and put an asterisk there. So I'm looking for VLC, and anything that says VLC that is displayed after the letters VLC will show up as well. I'll hit enter, and it provides me a nice list of stuff here that I can get. And if you remember, we had one there, Pipewire. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy that real quick. And I'm going to say sudo apt install, paste that in, and hit enter. Now it's not challenging me for my password this time because I very recently gave it my password. It treats this as the same session, and so it goes through and does that and says, hey, look, we're going to install this. Nothing's being upgraded. We're just going to fire through that real fast. So now we have VLC. If I were to browse through here, go to sound and video, and remember that wasn't there originally, it is now. So it sets that up. Now let's say we wanted to remove VLC from the computer. We don't want it anymore. We want it gone. That's pretty straightforward as well. Sudo apt remove VLC, hit enter, and say, are you sure you want to do this? The following things were automatically installed when you installed this, and we don't need them anymore. Do you want to get rid of this? I'm going to say yes, and hit enter. But here's the thing. That didn't necessarily remove everything. In fact, remember, right here, after this update, after this operation, only 200K of disk space will be freed. If we scroll back up here, all the way back here, it was going to install 83 megs. That doesn't line up. So what do? Sudo apt auto remove. It's looking for anything that's kind of left behind. 6.75 megs. Yes, there we go. Because it found other things that it didn't necessarily remove right away. So the following things are going to be removed. And it found all these other things. Now, the other thing you can do is sudo apt purge VLC. And it's going to see if there's anything left. And in this case, there's not. So that takes care of that. If I come back over here and I go to sound video, it's not there anymore. If I type VLC, it's not there anymore. So it is gone. Next one we're going to do is we're going to install a different Office application called OnlyOffice. Let me open this up here. Let's see, Sublime, VLC, OnlyOffice. Here we go. OnlyOffice.com. We're going to go ahead and go to the download section. We're going to look for the desktop mobile apps, and we're going to click Linux. And here we go. Here are our options. Now, there's a few options here. One is this snap package. This works very much like what I just showed you from the software manager, is you can actually install this from the Snap store. Let's go ahead and click on that. That comes over here and you can just install this. This is created by the makers of Ubuntu. This is their tool that they like to use for installing applications. There's a system called FlatHub, very much the same concept. It acts like a store you can just install. So those two are really common. And in fact, if we go to the software manager, and if we go and look for only Office, I think it's going to actually show up in here, and it's actually going to give you one from what's called FlatHub, which is this version. But we're going to install it using a different type. This is going to be very, very similar to what you're used to in Windows. But you'll notice here when it says, hey, which distribution of Linux are you using? I don't see Linux Mint. Well, that's weird. Well, Linux Mint is a derivative of Ubuntu, or a fork of Ubuntu. So that's a really important thing to know, is what upstream distribution your current distribution is a part of. And upstream from Linux Mint is Ubuntu. So when you see Ubuntu, that's what you want to use if you're using Linux Mint. And actually upstream from Ubuntu is Debian. And there's a really large map of all this stuff that I might show it sometime in the future, but it's gigantic. So what do we have? Well, in my case, I've got a AMD 64 type processor, so I'm going to click on that one, and it's going to download what's called a .deb. Okay, this is a package that is very much like a .exe. So like when you go to install something on Windows, that went to my downloads here. So I'm going to double click on that. It's going to open the installer, and here we go. So now it's saying, hey, do you want to install this? Okay, it's telling me a little bit about it. It says I got to install some other stuff, but I'll just hit install package, provide my password, say yes, I want to allow the other software to be installed, and it's going to install. There we go. It's now installed. So if I go here and I go to Office, we're going to find only Office right there. And now we've got a Microsoft Word-like application that really does actually feel more like Microsoft Word than we see in LibreOffice. Now this is running a little slow because this is a virtual machine that I didn't really give enough power to because I didn't really think about that. But you can see this has a very much Microsoft Office-like feel. Same thing if I want to open a spreadsheet. And it actually saves in the native Microsoft Office formats, so it ends up working really nicely, and you don't have to make a bunch of changes. Nice tool, and I'm going to close all of that. And that's a .deb file. Next one, which is Joplin. So Joplin, right here, is a really nice note-taking application that uses a language called Markdown. That personally I really prefer over even using things like Word, but let me go ahead and hit the download button, and it's going to take me to the information. I'll click the Linux button, and it's going to download the app image, which I already did before starting the video. So how does this work? Well, in this case, the entire application exists right here. This is the whole application. So you can move this out of your downloads, because your downloads, you should be able to just come in here at any point in time and just delete stuff from it. So you want to move this somewhere. Now, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to move that to my documents folder. And I'm going to make a new directory in here called app images. And I'm going to move that. Let's go back to downloads. Let's paste that right in here. I'm going to drop that there. There's actually a better spot for this when we talk about the actual structure of the file system, but for simplicity's sake, that's where I'm going to put this. So if I double click on this, most of the time these don't work right away. I normally have to come in here, permissions, allow it to execute as a program, and then double click on it, and it should launch right away. We're going to find out if it does, because I've had some other things happen with app images sometimes. It did fantastic. So really nice tool, up and running, and it's good to go. Again, when I came down here, if you look through here, you're going to find other ways you can do this install. There's always more choices, but I just wanted to show you that's how an app image works. If I wanted to get rid of this application, all I'd have to do is come in here and delete this file. The application is gone. The downside of using the app image is it's not in here. I can still search for it, but it doesn't actually find it. I did accidentally re-download it. Go ahead and delete that. See, it still thinks it's there. It needs to kind of re-index. So it's not really finding it the same way. So that's the downside of app images. Now, I'll show you how to customize the menu later. So there are ways around that. But the downside of an app image is that it doesn't install anything. It doesn't go anywhere. It completely exists within its own file here. So again, removal, very simple. Delete it. It's gone. It goes away. It is fully self-contained. That's its advantages. The disadvantage, it's not natively going to be part of the system. It doesn't update through standard update tools. It has to run its own update tool, which is normally, when you update these, I'm not sure if this has a update or check for updates, but if there's a new version you need to get, you download the new app image, you delete this one, you add the new one, and you move forward. So that's generally how that works. All right, so we've installed something from the store or software manager. We've installed someone from the repository. We've installed something as .deb, and we've dealt with an app image. Now we're going to go on to a couple of complicated installations. And I'm actually going to move these into a different order because one is less complicated than the other. Let's go ahead and get all this extra stuff out of our way. I'm going to go back to my terminal, and this is, let's go ahead and change our directory into the downloads. Now, one of the things about Linux is that capitalization matters. So if I try to change directory to downloads, that's going to throw an error at me. There's no file with lowercase down, or folder. There's no folder with lowercase d for downloads. I have to change directory to downloads like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show a list of all the files in this folder with letters ls. There it is. And you can see right here this one file here with this .tar.gz. Whenever you see this .tar, that's what's called a tarball, and it's an archive file. It is like a zip file. It's a type of packaging that pulls things together in one spot. The .gz is a type of zipping, but the .tar means everything's collected. There's multiple files and folders inside this one thing. So how do we unwrap that? There's a couple ways to do this. The long way is actually using the graphical interface, where you can double click on it and extract it, and then double click on it and extract it. It's multiple steps. In this case, the easy way is through the command line. And the command is tar -xf. Now I always the reason I pause there is I actually always go xvf. The V is verbose. It actually tells me what's coming out, but xvf. And then you need to tell it what file. I'm going to type idea, and I'm going to hit tab because I'm going to let it autofill the rest of that. I'm going to hit enter. And the V, that's why you're seeing all this stuff here. So you don't need that, but I just always do it. It kind of is programmed in my brain to tar-xvf. If I were to do that without the V, this would have just sat there and not shown me any significant progress. So for me, it's nice to see it. So now let's go ahead and let me clear the screen here, just make this a little easier to look at. If I type ls, you see two things here now. And notice they're different colors. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to make a file real quick. So what we have is, I just created just a text file. It's an empty text file. What we have here is the red one is a archive, the blue one is a folder, and the white one is a file. So that's kind of what we're looking at. These nice color coding, making things really easy to look at. But if I go into the idea folder, type ls, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. Now this is where we can go back over to our graphical interface if we choose to. I tend not to, but I'm going to show it to you like this. And there is this right here, install linux tar.txt. And this provides you all of the instructions of how to do this, okay? And the thing is, it's expecting you to understand what they mean by this, okay? So I could start the application very quickly and easily right now, but I don't want to keep it in my downloads directory. I'm going to put this in a specific folder. So how am I going to do that? Well, let's go up to the downloads directory here. Let's go ahead and clear the screen. We haven't really gotten into the Linux file system yet, so we can talk about that in more depth in another video. I wanted to get to right where you were installing stuff. But the Linux file system has a very specific structure to it. And so right here, let's kind of scroll through here. We have the opt directory, which is the optional files. This is where I tend to put non-critical applications. USR, or user directory, which would then have a bin folder, which is where I could actually put things. This is kind of the more common place to put things, but I tend to, something like this, like to use the opt directory. You see already the system itself installed OnlyOffice and Sublime Text in here. And I like to use this because when I go to back up my system, anything in here I can just ignore. I don't need this stuff. I can always reinstall these things. So the opt directory is where I'm going to put this. So how am I going to do that? Well, if I were to try and do that through the graphical interface, let's go here and let's copy and go to the opt directory and try and paste. Oh, look, I don't have paste. Now I could open as root. And now I can paste it in here. So that's something I can do. And I must not have given much space to the hard drive here. That's fine. I'll deal with that later. I will instead then cut, paste. There we go. All done. And put it in there. But again, notice I had to elevate my permission. And it's because this directory, this opt directory, is allowed only for the root user to actually put things in here. Now I'm going to undo that real fast. Move that back over here. And we're actually going to do that from the command line as well. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to go sudo mv for move directory and where we want to put it. Asks for a password, and it did literally the same thing. Okay, so just kind of depends on how you want to do that. Personally, whenever I'm dealing with a tar file, I'm going to do this through the command line. It's just much easier because if I double click on this, I then have to go through a lot of this and drag things out, and it just takes longer. So doing that from the command line for me has just always been the easier approach. So that's all. And if I want to remove that tar file, I can just say rm for remove. And there we go, it's gone. Now the final one I wanted to talk about is much more complicated, and we're not actually going to go through these steps. This is not common to have to do anymore, but this is called compiling from source. Sometimes you're still going to walk into these situations, and what will happen is anyone who's making you compile from the source code is going to provide you a detailed document telling you exactly what you need to do. So in this case, I'd have to download both of these files. Let's not do that. Download both of these files and follow these instructions. Now notice what I'm having here. It's being very specific, and one of the reasons you want to understand what you're doing with all this stuff is one of the riskiest things you can do is just copy and paste code, some commands, and just run them. So I'm just going to walk through kind of what this is doing real fast. It's installing a bunch of additional packages. This is all safe for this particular one. I know this one well. But it's installing all of these packages on your computer. Then inside the folder that it has, it's going to have you run a script that configures it. Then you run that. You see there's so many steps involved here. So over time, we'll talk about these. But I'm just going to let you know, you will come across this. It is a more complicated approach, and very few developers, even on GitHub, use this kind of approach anymore. It's almost always available as an option, but it's really, really uncommon as the only option anymore. Let's go ahead and clean up after ourselves. In the next video, we'll actually talk about, well, let's see, I've got a list of things here. We'll talk about navigating our way around the Linux system, just get an idea of different tools and things like that we have around the Linux system. All right, thanks. See you next time.